Elon, what kind of crazy dream would persuade you to think of trying to take on the auto industry and build an all-electric car? PayPal, SolarCity, Tesla, SpaceX, they're so spectacularly different. They're such ambitious projects at scale. How on earth has one person been able to innovate in this way? What is it about you?
It goes back to when I was in university. I thought about what are the problems that are most likely to affect the future of the world.
Most of American electricity comes from burning fossil fuels. How can an electric car that plugs into that electricity help?
I think it's extremely important that we have sustainable transport and sustainable energy production. That sort of overall sustainable energy problem is the biggest problem that we have to solve this century. Even if you take the same source fuel and produce power at the power plant and use it to charge electric cars, you're still better off. So if you take, say, natural gas, which is the most prevalent hydrocarbon source fuel, if you burn that in a modern General Electric natural gas turbine, you'll get about 60% efficiency. If you put that same fuel in an internal combustion engine car, you get about 20% efficiency. So in effect, even if you take in transmission losses into account and everything, even using the same source fuel, you're at least twice as better off charging an electric car than burning it at the power plant.
Okay. That scale delivers efficiency?
Yes,
yeah.
It does. And then the other point is we have to have sustainable means of power generation anyway, electricity generation. So given that we have to solve sustainable electricity generation, then it makes sense for us to have electric cars as the mode of transport. But I think actually all modes of transport will become fully electric, with the ironic exception of rockets. You have to come up with a really energy-efficient car. So that means making it incredibly light. And so what you're seeing here is the only all-aluminum body and chassis car made in North America. In fact, we applied a lot of rocket design techniques to make the car light despite having a very large battery pack. The rest of the car has to be very light to offset the mass of the pack. And then you have to have a low drag coefficient so that you have good highway range. At Tesla, we developed something called the supercharging technology. So by the end of this year, you'll be able to drive from LA to New York. You're just using the supercharger network, which charges at 5 times the rate of anything else. As I mentioned earlier, we have to have sustainable electricity production as well as consumption. I'm quite confident that the primary means of power generation will be solar. I mean, it's really indirect fusion is what it is. We've got this giant fusion generator in the sky called the sun, and we just need to tap a little bit of that energy for purposes of human civilization. Most people know but don't realize they know is that the world is almost entirely solar powered already. If the sun wasn't there, we'd be a frozen ice ball at 3 degrees Kelvin. And the sun powers the entire system of precipitation. The whole ecosystem is solar powered.
In a gallon of gasoline, you have effectively thousands of years of sun power compressed into a small space. So it's hard to make the numbers work right now on solar and to remotely compete with, for example, natural gas. How are you going to build a business here?
Actually, I'm confident that solar will beat everything. Hands down, including natural gas. The key thing to do is to get the cost of that initial installation low and then get the cost of the financing low. But those are the two factors that drive the cost of solar, and we've made huge progress in that direction, and that's why I'm confident we'll actually beat natural gas. I think it's a good thing because utilities have been this monopoly and people haven't had any choice. So effectively it's the first time there's been competition for this monopoly, because the utilities have been the only ones that own those power distribution lines, but now it's on your roof. So I think it's actually very empowering for homeowners and businesses.
And you really picture a future where a majority of power in America, like within a decade or two, or within your lifetime, is solar?
I'm extremely confident that solar will be at least a plurality of power, and most likely a majority. Predict it will be a plurality in less than 20 years. So in roughly 18 years, I think we'll see more power from solar than any other source.
Let's go back to another bet that you made with yourself, I guess. A crazy bet. You'd made some money from the sale of PayPal. You decided to build a space company. Why on earth would someone do that? And
so I tell people, well, I was trying to figure out the fastest way to turn a large fortune into a small one. And they'd look at me like, oh, is he serious? It was a close call. I mean, things almost didn't work out. We came very close to failure, but we managed to get through that point in 2008. The goal of SpaceX is to try to advance rocket technology, and in particular to try to crack a problem that I think is vital for humanity to become a spacefaring civilization, which is to have a rapidly and fully reusable rocket. What are the things that need to happen in order for the future to be an exciting and inspiring one? I really think there's a fundamental difference if you sort of look into the future between a humanity that is a space-faring civilization that's out there exploring the stars on multiple planets. And I think that's really exciting. And compared with one where we are forever confined to Earth until some eventual extinction event.
So you've somehow slashed the cost of building a rocket by 75%, depending on how you calculate. How on earth have you done that? NASA has been doing this for years. How have you done this?
Well, we've made significant advances in the technology of the airframe, the engines, the electronics, and the launch operation.
You think it's more dangerous to patent than not to patent?
Since our primary competitors are national governments, the enforceability of patents is questionable. They're all expendable. All rockets that fly today are fully expendable. The space shuttle was an attempt at a reusable rocket, but even the main tank of the space shuttle was thrown away every time. And the parts that were reusable took a 10,000-person group 9 months to refurbish for flight. So the space shuttle ended up costing $1 billion per flight. It's important that the rocket stages be able to come back, to be able to return to the launch site and be ready to launch again within a matter of hours. What a lot of people don't realize is the cost of the fuel, of the propellant, is very small. It's much like on a jet. So the cost of the propellant is about 0.3% of the cost of the rocket. So it's possible to achieve, let's say, roughly 100-fold improvement in the cost of spaceflight if you can effectively reuse the rocket. Wow. That's why it's so important. Every mode of transport that we use, whether it's planes, trains, automobiles, bikes, horses, is reusable, but not rockets. So we must solve this problem in order to become a spacefaring civilization. SpaceX or some combination of companies and governments need to make progress in the direction of making life multiplanetary, of establishing a base on another planet, on Mars being the only realistic option, and then building that base up until we're a true multi-planet species.
How have you done this? These projects are so... These PayPal, SolarCity, Tesla, SpaceX, they're so spectacularly different. They're such ambitious projects at scale. How on earth has one person been able to innovate in this way? What is it about you?
I don't know, actually. I don't have a good answer for you. I work a lot. I mean, and a lot.
My theory is that you have an ability to think at a system level of design that pull together design, technology, and business. So if TED was TBD, design, technology, business, into one package, synthesize it in a way that very few people can, and this is the critical thing, feel so damn confident in that click-together package that you take crazy risks. You bet your fortune on it, and you seem to have done that multiple times. I mean, almost no one can do that. Can we have some of that secret sauce? Can we put it into our education system? Can someone learn from you?
Boil things down to their fundamental truths and reason up from there, as opposed to reasoning by analogy. Through most of our life, we get through life by reasoning by analogy, which essentially means kind of copying what other people do with slight variations. And you have to do that, otherwise it's mentally, you wouldn't be able to get through the day. But when you want to do something new, you have to apply the physics approach. Physics is really sort of figured out how to discover new things that are counterintuitive, like quantum mechanics. It's really counterintuitive. I think that's an important thing to do. And then also to really pay attention to negative feedback and solicit it, particularly from friends. This may sound like sort of simple advice, but it's hardly anyone does that, and it's incredibly helpful.
Boys and girls watching, study physics. Learn from this man.
Boy, I've forgotten how much work it actually is to start a company. It's a lot of work.
Apple suffered for several years from lousy engineering management. I have to say it.
We tend to make sure that our feet are on the ground and we realize that we're going to be judged like every other startup from here on out, and that is by what our product is and how timely we bring it to market.